Hello, everyone. Welcome again to another class with Lisa Teichner and myself, which is Step 4 Win with Buyer series. Step 4 is Find a Home, and we have the pleasure of having Lee Potts be the instructor today. Yeah, Lisa, did you want to introduce Lee?
Sure. Well, and I'll let him talk a little bit about his business, I think, before we get started. But Lee has been an agent with our office for 4 years, Lee-ish, probably about 4 years. He and Barbara,
Yeah.
he and his wife, who have a team, they used to run their own independent brokerage and are amazing agents and just kill it, and have some great business practices in general that I think people tend to really relate well to, no matter how you run your business, because they are kind of aggressive enough to be very successful and proactive in their business, yet they are relationship based enough to have a very great repeat and referral sphere, and a soft enough touch where people love working with them. And I think just do a really great job in balancing those two things that I think some agents have challenges with. Have had a lot of success in this business for many years. Lee, you can speak to that, how long you've been in the business, and have some systems, very specific systems that work really well, which I look forward to hearing you share about with the group today. So take it away. Yeah, Chad, unless there's anything else you need to do housekeeping wise.
No, if anyone needs to use the bathrooms are down the hall, whatever hall you might be in. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, Lisa and I will chime in with some ahas. We'll be looking at the chat as well. Lisa Crosby Torres in Honolulu will also help as well. And Lee, take it away. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and you're feel free to share the screen.
So first thing is, the way that I like to start meetings is the way we start a lot of meetings here on Maui, and that's with an aloha. So first of all, everybody, aloha.
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 All right, and the second thing that I like to do is ask you, what day is today? And your response is, it's just another beautiful day in paradise. Okay? Aloha. What day is it today?
It's
a beautiful day in paradise.
You can see we're going to have to work on our scripts here. So Barbara and I landed on this beautiful island, gosh, coming up on 16 years ago. She dragged me off the mainland, kicking and screaming. And now we love it here on Maui. Wouldn't leave for any reason at all. So it's been 16 great years, and feels like yesterday. And it kind of feels like yesterday when we started in real estate. But gosh, we landed on this island in April of 2005 when the market was going just like that. Kept going down till 2008, and then it really went down. So this is kind of our second trip through a recession. And this one is much, much more user-friendly. We started with Keller Williams down at Kihei, and we were there for 3 years. And then we left and started Aloha Realty Group. We built that up to about 18 agents. We had a pretty good thing going here. But then there was a lot of consolidation going on. And when Lisa and Colette started, and the core group from Honolulu started Keller Williams Realty Maui, originally Keller Williams Island Living, KW Island Living. We decided to come back to the mothership, Keller Williams, and we've never thought about that twice. We've always been happy to be here, and especially the culture, the sharing that we do here, and all of the training, because all of those things were missing from all the other companies, and in large part, I think they still are. And today, I have the pleasure of covering Find the Home, section number 4. And in the material, it's called Show a House, Sell a House. And so what we're going to cover today, I mean, really, showing a house kind of seems like a no-brainer. But over the years, we've learned from our teachers, our mentors, our clients who struggled through the process sometimes, going to conferences, going to meetings. And so we've kind of developed a process that we teach here at our team. And so we're going to go through that. And so we're going to cover everything from showing to closing. And when I started thinking about this, working with a buyer should be a lifetime linear process. So I think about this sort of like planting a seed. So from the first time we generate that lead, so maybe it's somebody we met at an open house, maybe it's somebody you already know that just now decided they're going to be in the real estate market. But from the very beginning, we're going to do the things that Adrian and Attilio told us back in the very first session of Win with Buyers. And Win with Buyers itself that's really a linear process. It goes from that lead generation through closing, and then Dean Otto in a few weeks is going to share post-closing, nurturing those buyers. And if you think about it like planting a seed, it grows roots, tree grows up, branches go out. If it's a fruit tree, hopefully it's going to bear some fruit. And so those are relationships that we have built over the years, multiple generations. We have clients who have referred their children, their relatives, their co-workers. And over the years, that one buyer has turned into 8 to 10 transactions. We've got young folks that we've helped buy their first home that now we're on their second or third investment property. So you have a system, whether you're using Command or if you're using something else, but you've got ways to drip on those people, remind them of what's going on in their neighborhoods, things that they've been interested in before, and ways to keep in touch with folks after you've closed. In my world, there's no such thing as past client. So I never want to hear anybody say past client. They're all clients. And in this whole process, I think what Randy Antonio did last week, that setup is probably the most important step, because whenever we've cut that short, we have issues down the road. We find ourselves in the back end of showings before we're writing a contract, and us and the client are not necessarily on the same page. And what's even worse is when you get into escrow and you're not on the same page and you're getting through the process. So in a hot market, we all want to be in a hurry. We all want to go fast. But I've heard Gary Keller say before, you got to go slow to go fast. So you want to take time to get that set up. So just kind of thinking back to Randy's presentation last week, any takeaways? Let's get 2 or 3 takeaways. Anyone?
I'll chime in with one. Is I think that, and I've always thought this, and certainly Randy just reinforced it, but the buyer consultation to me is the most important part of that process, because you're setting the right expectation. You're telling them what to expect throughout that process, and building a better relationship and understanding what your client's goals and needs are. So it's kind of all-encompassing, extremely important process.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Anyone else?
Along those lines, it makes your job so much easier. I mean, it sets up the whole process as being as smooth as possible, because like Chad said, you set up expectations, and then it makes the whole process so much easier. You don't have to go back. You can remind people of the conversations that you had if you run into snags, but it really, if it's that whole idea of setting things up the right way at the beginning and the relationship so that you don't run into problems. I mean, the agents, everybody thinks, oh, this is such a great agent, or why don't they have the same issues with their transactions? Why is their conversion of escrows to closing higher than mine? And a lot of that has to do with that prep.
Okay, so both of you touched on setting expectations. And when you're finished with that consultation, I want you to do just a few more things to set the proper expectations. Because like I said, sometimes we get down the road and we're on different pages. First of all, the most common question a realtor gets is what? You can read it on the screen.
How's the market?
How's the market? So, and that question, to me, there's never a right answer, because there are different markets, right? So if you've got a buyer that wants to buy a house on Maui and they're looking for something under the median price or at the median price, which happens to be $785,000, That's a very different market than somebody that's looking to buy a condotel. So if you're looking to buy a medium price house, last month we sold 54 of them here on Maui. Right now there are 67 on the market. So how much inventory do we have? Just about 1 month, right? So that buyer needs different preparation. You need to set different expectations than somebody that's buying a condo down at Kaanapali Shores, where we haven't sold a single 1-bedroom unit since February, right? So inventory is building up over there. If they're buying something in the luxury market, that's a different market. So there's not a great question to how's the market. It's really what market you're interested in. And then we need to set the expectations there. We want to make sure we let the buyer know that we've prepared all the data. So for every complex that we're going to look through, we've got comps, solds, actives, and pendings, right? If we're going to neighborhoods, we've prepared comps for every neighborhood. We want to assure them that we have all the data, because if you don't assure them that you have all the data, you're going to go out, show property, they're going to notice something. They're going to notice a complex we didn't see. They're going to notice a house that we didn't have on our list. You know why it's not on the list. They don't know why it's on the list, not on the list. You don't have trust yet. So they're going to go back and jump on Zillow, which we all know how accurate that information is. And they're going to say, hey, why didn't Lee show me that place? Why didn't he bring me to this place? And so then the trust level starts to drop. And the most important thing that we can do is build that trust. I also want to let them know at the beginning that as we go through and look at houses or condos, I'm going to be asking them some questions. One of them is this the 85% house question? And so years ago at a conference, this just really resonated with me. The woman is speaking and she says, you know, I've been a realtor for a lot of time. I've done hundreds of transactions and I've never found the perfect house. Now, when as a new agent, I said, I'm going to help you find the perfect condo. I've never found the perfect house. She said, I have shown some people so many homes and they couldn't find the perfect house, that finally what they did is they bought land and built their own perfect house. And so what happened? They build a house, they're really excited. They call you, say, hey, Lee, I want you to come up and see my house. And this just happened to me, so the story is really fresh. I want you to come up and see my house. So $2 million house, and the perfect house. When I walk in the door, we start walking around, and what do they say? If I had this to do over again, I would have put this over here. I would use this different finish there. So my advice is, if you can find the 85% property, buy it. And especially if you're doing condos, because what your buyers will do, especially when you're new, is you'll get to the end of the day, they say, well, I like the view at this one. So if you get that view with this kitchen and these bedrooms at that price, you know, you're kind of done. So you need to have that conversation up front. Also, since we know they're serious because you get a buyer rep agreement, or you didn't get a buyer rep agreement, but you still trust them, you're going to take them out. You're going to tell them, I want you to keep a rolling top 3. So a rolling top 3, if they've got 3 and they find something they like better, they can drop that one off. But the rolling top 3 helps them focus, right? And the suggestion that's in the course materials is also to give each one kind of a little handle, a name. So it's the white kitchen house, or it's the red door house, or something else that's going to help them to remember. And then I tell them, I'm probably going to ask you 3 questions at the end of each showing, or at the end of most of the showings. One of them is going to be, can you see yourself living in this home? The next one is going to be, can you see yourself buying this home? So I'm telling them up front that I'm going to give them those soft closes so that when we get to the real close, they're already expecting it. In fact, if you do this consistently, you'll walk out of the showing and they'll tell you, yeah, it was an 85% house. Yeah, and I could see myself living there, right? So they're going to start to answer your questions for you. The other thing that we've been taught to do is ask them if they'd like to know their odds, right? So would you like to know your odds of finding a house? And they'll look at you like, What do you mean odds? You have odds? And so the answer is, yeah, over the years, my team or I, however you answer that part of it, have kept records. And what we found is that about 60% of the buyers we work with find their property the first time we go out. And about 40%, the remaining 40%, about half of those find the property on the second time we go out. The other 20%, well, your mileage may vary, but what I've just done is I've given them permission to not see everything on the market. I've given them permission to buy the first thing that they fall in love with. That's a seed that's planted in there, and that will help you down the road. Want to make sure that we cover negotiating dynamics. The way we show property and write contracts here is different than the mainland, different than Canada. So we want to let them know how this process is going to go. So if you're in California and you're going to write a contract, you sit down, you write the contract, you turn it over, and you give it to them. I mean, they're hot. You want to do it now. Here, we explain to them that our process is we're going to get all the terms of the contract. We're going to draft it up. It's going to go to another broker, and then it's going to come to you on DocuSign. So they know the process. Remind them that everything has to be in writing. You can't do verbal offers. You can't do verbal counters. That doesn't work. So explain to them what the process is. And if it's a hot market, explain to them how multiple offers works and that you've got a strategy for winning on multiple offers. Here we talk about our team as well. And you might talk about your team, who your broker is, if you're not the broker, the team of people that are around you. It helps to set that table as well. Hey, Marcus.
Hey, Lee. This is Riley.
Hey, Riley.
What was the third question I have? Can you see yourself living in this house? Can you see yourself buying this house?
Would you like to write an offer?
Oh, okay.
Except that's not exactly how I'm going to say it.
Got it. Thank you. How are you going to say it?
I'll tell you when we get there. It's a linear process, right?
All right. Cool beans.
All right. I forgot to say, we're going to have some fun. If you do have a question, it's a safe place. So certainly ask the question. And I'm going to make sure that you got some takeaways. Sounds like Riley's taking notes there. And we cover all this pretty thoroughly. Showing the property. First of all, when I go out with a couple, again, I'm going to do a CMA for every area that we're going to go see. So for condos, I do it just for that building usually, unless there aren't a lot of sales in the building. Up here in Napili Bay, there are very few sales on the whole bay, so I probably do CMA for the whole bay. And I'm going to do active, pending, and sold, usually for the last 6 months. If it's a place where there aren't many sales, I'll go back a year, maybe even 2 years, so that they've got more data. And then if it's a couple that I'm working with, I'm going to print out 3 sets. Whoa, can't see that very well. I'm going to print out 3 sets of listing sheets. So one for each of them. So they've got something visual that they can remember, something that they can look at on their own, and they don't have to be shifting them back and forth. Then I print out one for me with all of my notes on it. And then slow down. There's some data that came out of NAR recently, and we really started noticing this in the last 2 years. People didn't want to ride with us in the car. They wanted to drive on their own or meet us at the property. NAR said that's because we drive too fast. So slow down. And the drive too fast, my wife backed into a stone wall a couple of years back. So I took the car into our clients at Kaanapali Collision. And there were 2 other realtors in there with their cars as well. So maybe there's something to it. Slow down and then plan your route to the property. So if you're on the west side and you're looking at a condo on Lower Road, or if you're on the south side and south side and you're looking down on Kihei Road, there's not a lot of variation. You're going to drive down the street, but do it on the ocean side. Don't do it up on the highway, okay? If they're buying a home, take your time, drive by some restaurants, show them where the grocery store is. If there's a park in that little community, make sure you drive by the park. If they've got kids that are in school, drive by the school so they know where the school is. People are buying into a community. So if you start building a preference for that community, showing them what the benefits of that community are and what the lifestyle is going to be like, then you've got a better chance at finding a property that they're going to like. Next thing is, where do you park? So I never really thought about this very much, but you've kind of got three places you can park if it's a house, right? You can park in the driveway. You know, if the driveway is empty, you might park there. You can park right on the street, or you could park across the street. And so if you think about it, if you park across the street, then they have a better chance to see the curb appeal for the house, better chance to build emotion. They can look down the street. They can see what the street looks like. What does the neighborhood look like? And if, as you walk to the house, you know, they can see the outside of the house very clearly. If you park in the driveway, their view is the garage door, right? If you're going to a condo, then if you're meeting them, I'd like to meet them in the lobby. And if I'm driving them, I'd like to drive them close to the lobby, because a lot of places like Honua Kai, Kaanapali Shores, Ainanalu, they have beautiful lobbies. And so it just starts building that emotion right there. And Ainanalu is really a good example, because you look at it from the street and there's nothing. I mean, it's just a parking lot and the lobby and some buildings. But as you're going on to the condo property, I like to ask people, have you been on this property before? And if they haven't, and even if they have, I say, hey, why don't we walk the grounds first? We'll see where the restaurant is. Take a look at the pools. So again, it gives them a chance to buy into the community and the lifestyle. So it's going to be important where you meet them. And then meeting at the property. Here on Maui, you're usually going to have a listing agent is going to meet you at the property, right? So back in the mainland, everything's on a lockbox. You call up, say, I'm going to go show the house at 4, you go show the house. Here, there's usually going to be a listing agent that meets you. If there's not, safety is really being stressed. And so if you don't know them very well, then you have them go in first. You don't want to be behind them, okay? So that's a big safety concern. If you do know them, whether the agent's there to meet you and the house is set up, or whether you've had a chance to go set up the house first, or you may be walking into a dark house, which happens sometimes. But if you do know them, you should go in first. So what you want to do is open the door, step across the threshold, and then look back at their faces. Okay, that first impression is going to tell you a lot, and it's involuntary. When they look at the interior, if they like it, their eyes are going to dilate a little bit, their eyebrows are going to go up. You're going to be able to tell if they like it from the time you step into the house. Then let them do most of the talking. You want to read their body language. A friend of mine in high school, we graduated from college together. We went and bought houses at similar places. He was in construction. He said, I hate realtors. They're so stupid and they make so much money, right? All they do is they walk in and they say, this is the kitchen. This is the bathroom. So just take that word of advice. Don't say that. You want to let them do the talking, because if you're doing all the talking, then they feel self-conscious about talking themselves. And you'd like to be able to listen and hear what they're saying. Okay. Watch their body language. If it looks like they're entering into a state of desire, this is the third step. It's the third stage in the stages of buying. The final step is commitment, which we'll get to in a little bit. It's also the third stage in dating. So just if you have trouble remembering, when you get to desire, that's the third step. If they're not in a state of desire, and we'll talk about buying signals, then probably you're not going to do any closing questions. Their mind isn't open to closing at that point. If they're not showing any desire, it's going to fall flat. If they are showing desire, you are going to talk to them with some soft closing questions. And remember, you already prepared them for these questions, so they know that it's coming. So the buying signals, one is if they go through the property more than one time. So you're at a house, they walk through the house, they come back. If there's another agent there, if the listing agent is there, they may walk through again. They may be a little bit self-conscious about talking right there. But if they walk through the property more than once, that could be a buying signal. And if they only walk through once and they come back and they're very polite, the other agent is there, they're being very nice, very sweet, but they seem like they're ready to go, ask them, is there any part of the home you'd like to see again? And if they respond to you, no, it's a lovely home, but we've seen it, they don't like the house. Okay, so that's not the one. Other buying signals is if they sit down. So if they're in the house and they sit down and they start looking around, they're starting to mentally take possession of the house. They're starting to move in. At this point, you want to let them move in. Okay, so even if you've got another appointment in 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and I've seen agents do this, their clients are moving into that property and they're hurrying them out the door. Don't do that. Text that other agent, say, hey, we're running behind. I'll let you know when we're going to be there. Let them move in. If they start acting kind of lovey-dovey, yep, they're liking that house. If they start to ask you very specific questions, what's the HOA? How much are the HOAs? What's included? How much are the property taxes? If they start doing mental measurements, honey, do you think the sofa will fit over there? Okay, those are all pretty strong buying signals. If they start talking about family gatherings, if they start talking about parties, if they start saying, wait till the folks back home see the condo that we bought in Maui, do you think those are good buying signals? You can give me a thumbs up. All right, thank you, Lisa. So you want to do your wrap up. If you have any of these buying signals and you want to start to wrap things up, you want to go to the best location in the house to do that. So if it's a home and you've wandered through the whole house, they've looked at everything, they've looked at it twice, and the last thing you see is the garage, do not start your wrap up in the garage. Okay, go back to the best place in the house. So maybe it's the living room, maybe it's some other spot that you notice that they really, really like, it generated a lot of emotion. You go back there to do your wrap up. If it's an oceanfront condo, what I was taught is usually there's going to be a sliding glass door that steps out to a lanai that goes out to the ocean. You want to go back in that room, you want to plant yourself in front of that door, turn your back to the ocean view so that when they come in, they're looking at the ocean view. Okay, that's what they came to Maui for. That is the money shot. Okay, so you want to wrap up in the best room in the house. And then you want to go through your closing questions. Okay, if there's another agent there, if there are other people in there, you're obviously going to need to do this in a different location. But for this exercise, we're going to say that's where you are. Okay. We like to use soft closes, as Lisa mentioned in the beginning, and the difference between a soft close and a hard close is a soft close is low risk and low drama. A hard close, what can I do to get you into this car today? We've all heard that one, right? It's high risk, high drama. So we want to avoid drama. This is a no drama island. And so our soft closing list we've already told them that we're going to go through this, right? So there's no surprise. So start off asking them, is this an 85% house? And they're going to say, yeah, this is an 85% house. Is this in your top three? Yeah, this is in our top three. Well, where did you rank it? Well, this is our favorite one, Lee. This is the one we like the most. And so then it's, could you see yourself living here? And you start through that progression. And then you get to Riley's question, how do you say it? How do you say, do you want to make an offer? So I've got two recommendations. So if you've studied DISC, you know that D's and I's have a high tolerance or risk tolerance. They make decisions quickly and they don't like a lot of detail, right? So if you're a D, I'm a D. If you're a D, the D's either they know where they're going, and you're either helping them get there or you're in the way, right? I's just want to cut through all the BS and let's have some fun here, okay? We want to have fun buying this property. And so your question there is, shall we see if we can buy this house? So Riley, there's how we ask that side. C's and S's are more conservative. So they have a low risk tolerance. C's in particular need a lot of detail. S's don't like to rock the boat. S's really don't like to rock the boat. They don't want to offend anybody. And so it's harder for them to make decisions. However, neither one of them like to lose. So if they're tennis players, they're the people that stand on the back line and just make sure they're in front of the ball. You may beat them, but they're not going to make a mistake and lose themselves. So for them, the question is, shall we make sure we don't lose this home? I screwed this up a few years ago, and I'm going to tell you about that. And what is the question or the response that we get? Boy, at least half the time, maybe more. We want to think about it. Okay. So the we want to think about it answer is they're either confused or they're afraid. And they're not going to tell you we're confused and afraid. You're going to have to figure that out on your own. And so there's a good chance that back at the beginning, when you were doing the expectations or when you were doing that consultation, you missed something. There was something that they didn't get clear on. And the goal is to get buyers to clarity. So when they get clarity, they can make a decision. If they're unclear, they're going to think about it. And so they're in your materials, in your dialogues, in your scripts, there are all kinds of ways to handle this. But I'm going to give you a couple of things that we do. And Robin and some of the other people that have worked with us before know about these. If you think they're confused, and again, they're not going to tell you, but you have to get that sense from what they say and from what their body language is. If you get the sense that they're confused, we're going to use what's called the scratch pad or practice contract. So if they're feeling confused, you just look at my notes here. They're going to say, we really like this house. But we don't make any decisions quickly. We always like to sleep on it. And so you want to acknowledge that. Say, well, I know it's a big decision, and I want you to be comfortable with your decision. And I'm going to give you some space here. And then ask them, would it be all right with you if I just scratch out some basics of a purchase contract on the back of this MLS listing sheet so that you've got something specific that you can take home with you to think about? With me so far? So the things you're going to scratch out on the back of the pad are going to be, first, the price. And so we're going to put them into a state of pretend. We're going to say, imagine for a moment, if you would, that you're going to buy this house. So the purchase price is $950,000. So pretend for a moment you can wave a magic wand and you can offer whatever you want. And they're going to look at you and they're going to give you a number. So price is $950. We'll use Joe because this is exactly what Joe said. It's $950, Joe. So pretend you can offer whatever you want. He said, well, I don't really want to have a 9 in front of it. So I think I'd offer $899. Whatever they say, don't raise your eyebrows. Don't argue with them. Don't say the market's not blah, blah, blah. Write it down. Just write it down. Okay? You're going to go along with them. We're in pretend. Then you're going to go to the loan terms. Hey, Joe, you're qualified for 80% of this value. Do you still want to put 20% down? Yeah, Lee, I like to conserve my cash. I want to put 20% down. Some other people, C's and S's, are going to say, nah, we really want to put 30% down. Just write it down. Ask them when they'd like to close. So when would you like to take possession of the house? Well, Thanksgiving's coming up, so we'll have a week off or something so I can be packing, moving stuff around. So maybe right at the first of the month. Okay, so we'll put December 31. Ask them anything that you saw that you want to make sure is included or anything that you don't want. So in the house, it's like, yeah, there's that tool shed out back. I'd really like to make sure that's included. You write that down. Anything you want to make sure is not here. Yeah, that treadmill in the bedroom, I don't want that thing in here. I don't even want to think about getting on a treadmill. So you take that out. At this point, you recap what you've just talked about. Okay, we're writing the price down for $899. These are the loan terms, closing on December 31st. We're going to have inspection contingencies. So we're going to make sure you get a house inspection. We're going to make sure you get termite inspection. We're going to make sure you see the homeowners association documents so that you know that that's in good shape. And you're going to write that down on the back of the listing sheet. And at that point, what we've done is we just took this big, scary thing, and as I've heard Gary Keller say, we chunked it down, okay? So all of a sudden, this big, scary thing has become little bite-sized pieces, okay? And then you ask them, would you like to see the house again tomorrow? And, you know, they might say, well, yeah, that would be a good idea. I think we would like to see the house again tomorrow. And so then you're going to ask them, when I call the agent to make another appointment tomorrow, if there are other showings or offers coming in, do you want me to call and let you know? And they say, well, what do you mean there are other offers? What do you mean? It's like, well, if this house happens to just sell overnight, are you going to be okay with that? So you're giving them all the power, you're giving them all the decision making. And at that point, about half the time, they're going to say, well, yeah, we like it. Why don't we just go ahead? Or they might say, yeah, we're going to be okay with that. See if you can set it up for tomorrow and yeah, give us a call. Okay. Does that sound like a process you could use?
I like this a lot, Lee. I think it sounds great.
Thank you. The other option is they're afraid, and I want to think about it. A lot of times this is going to be the case in resort markets. You also have to watch folks because you might have one that's a D and one that's an S, and so you're going to have to just be careful around that. The reverse auction, I love this one. And so I'm going to tell you about the one I screwed up, if that's all right. What you're doing is you're going to start low and find their comfort zone. So Rick, we'll use Rick because Rick was the guy. He's out here with his wife. They like to stay up on Napili Bay at Napili Kai, beautiful place. She wants something here, he wants something here. Rick is a high C. Rick is an inventor. He has started a couple of companies. He's sold a couple of companies, very detail oriented, a little socially awkward. He's a C kind of guy, and he's a CS. So he doesn't really want to hurt anybody's feelings. So we're looking at a house. It's priced at $1.2 million. And I've given him all the data. So he knows it's overpriced. I know it's overpriced. He knows I know it's overpriced. So we look at the house, they walk through the house twice. The agent, the showing agent is there. So we couldn't have a lot of discussion, a lot of free discussion. They walk out in the backyard. We'd seen a few other houses that day. None of them were the one. This one was the one. But it's $1.2 million. So we finish the showing there. We go back to their hotel room for the wrap up. We're back in their hotel room. And Rick says, yeah, I really like that one. We didn't really care for any of the other ones, but that one's overpriced. And, you know, I don't want to make an offer on it. So he's a C and I'm a D, and I proceeded like a D when I should have become a C, just like him. But I did the auction close and I said, so would you buy the house? You know, imagine, if you will, you could wave a magic wand. So we're just in pretend. If you could offer 900,000 and get the house for 900, would you buy it? Oh yeah, I'd buy it for 900. I said, okay, well, what if the price was 950? And he said, yeah, 950, that's in my budget. I think that's a fair price for it. Yeah, I'd buy it at 950. I said, what about 975? He says, I don't know, I'd have to think about that. So I said, well, what about $1 million even? He goes, no, I don't think it's worth $1 million. So then I asked him, so why don't we offer 950 and see if we can get the house? All right. So that was a mistake because he said, no, I don't want to offend anybody. I don't want to do it. So then I said, Rick, okay, if you come back here next year, because once they leave the island, they ain't coming back for probably a year, and that house sells for 975, you're going to be okay with that? He says, yeah, I'll be okay with that. Yeah, I'll be okay with that. So two big things that I did wrong is, first I asked, shall we see if we can get this house? My closing question should have been, should we make sure we don't lose this house? And the next thing that I did wrong is I said, would you like to see it? I didn't ask him, would you like to see it again tomorrow? So I left both of those things out. They flew back to California. A year later, they're back here. We're out looking at homes again. We drive down Lower Honoapi'ilani past that house, and what does Rick ask me? Hey, Lee, did that house did it ever sell? Did it ever sell? Yeah, it did. Oh, really? How much? 975. I would have paid that for it.
Yeah.
So that's the one that got away.
Well, so what do you think is a good script? What do you do differently now, though? Because the whole offending the seller, I mean, people have heard that before. Buyers think that that's the case. Sometimes we hear that. You know, what does the conversation have to be for them to realize, you know, maybe put themselves in the seller's shoes? Or how do you handle that now?
Handling it now, first of all, I use the different clothesline. Shall we make sure we don't lose it? But then we have the conversation. You have to coax them along. So you have to let them talk, and you have to remind them that this is a business transaction, right? It's not personal. S's really don't like to be personal. So it's not personal. It's not going to offend them. The worst thing that's going to happen is they're going to give you a counter offer. And if we don't make an offer, you're never going to know, are you going to be all right with that? And so we just talk them through it. We try to calm down their fear because they're afraid of offending the seller, right? And what we want them to do is to get something down on paper so that, you know, 3 years from now, they're not coming back saying, Lee, you're the reason I lost that house. You should have pushed me harder.
Yeah, you should have pushed me. We've all heard that too. You should have pushed me. You should have told me.
Yep. And, you know, would you like to see the house again tomorrow? And then do let them sleep on it and go back. Okay, We got about 10 minutes left here. And that's really all of my presentation. So we've kind of gone from, we've acquired the lead, we've done the consultation, we've set them out to go out and see the house, and we've gone through some different closing techniques. So any questions or anything in the chat that I can answer, because I have not been watching it.
No, we've been monitoring the chat. There's no new questions. Anyone have any ahas or takeaways or things that they'd like to share?
Well, that was just great. You know, that not every not every buyer or seller, particularly sellers, fall into the same category of buyers. Like, not everybody falls in the same category of how they're going to react. So, like, some people might not want to offend the other person, whereas other people, they don't care at all. They just want to undercut and get the best deal possible. So
yeah, my Ds, my investors, it's really the auction is really good for investors.
Jennifer says using the disc is very helpful. Molly says this has been so helpful. Kurt says I like the soft close approach and the 3 questions. Eileen said really appreciate sharing the disc personalities and how to approach those buyers. I love the comfort zone, figuring out their comfort zone by asking the questions and getting them into that price range that you really know you're working with, right? We do that with sellers and listing presentations, and we give them the information, the comparative market analysis, and then we also get a sense of where they think or how they feel, and we know what we're dealing with and where we need to get them. And with the buyer, I think letting them tell us what that range is more powerful than, okay, what do you want to offer, right?
Yep, I agree. It's about listening. It's not about talking.
Can I throw in something that I've done and I've been successful at as well, as especially if I'm dealing with a husband and wife or a couple, I'll ask them to rate the property 1 through 5, 5 being the best, 1 being the worst. But I ask them individually, and the reason and what I found is it strikes a conversation between the two of them that they didn't even realize that sometimes they're not on the same page, and I'm just a fly on the wall hearing the interaction, and I'm taking notes now. So and that way when I come back and circle back and I'll say, remember the red door house? Now, John, I know that you mentioned that the garage and everything else worked unbelievably for you. And hey, Betty, I remember that you said that the kid, now I'm helping them realize that even though they may not have individually had that as their top, it's the one that meets in the middle for the both of them.
Yeah, that's awesome. Jeff Glover, I think it is, also has a great system. It's in one of the old Ignite trainings where he does a funneling process when he shows the homes, which I thought was also really great. And you touched on some of this, which is, that's the whole thing about funneling, like the pricing is funneling which property when you're showing it, and would you be prepared to make an offer today? You said it a different way, but if give them permission. And one of the other things is funneling. So if you're showing them 10 properties, and we know that there's a limit to what people can retain in one period of showings, and you just give them the 2 homes to compare. So we see one home, then we see a second home. Okay, let's talk about between the first and second home, either the rating system or which one of these 2 would you be more inclined to buy? And they tell you. So then you eliminate, and it's a process of elimination. And so at the end, you're left with, their top 2 or what it is, and their top 3, or the one they're going to make an offer on because they funneled it with you.
Yeah, so we do a funnel process in the consultation. The other thing we do at the end, setting up expectations that I didn't mention, is asking the question, if we find the right house today, what are you going to do? And then you can find out a whole lot. I've had one fellow that I showed him a bunch of condos on Napili, and his wife never really liked him. And so you want to try to determine, if you've got 2 people that are on very different pages, as Chad just talked about. The guy really wanted to buy a condo. The wife didn't. And so it took like 2 years for me to figure that out back in the day. He still calls me, he asks me questions, but his wife ain't going to budge.
Yeah.
Well,
and like you said, the 85%, if we find a home that meets, once you teach them the 85% rule, which is great, that the perfect home doesn't exist, and go through that process. And if we find one that hits that percentage, are you prepared to make an offer today, right? And so they say, yes, we are. Okay, great. And if they're not, there's a reason behind that, and we want to talk about what that is. Kurt is asking, oh wait, there's a couple other things. So Michael says, if a buyer falls into the afraid category, it seems like walking through a draft purchase contract might be intimidating. How do you approach this tactfully and comfortably?
So if they're in the afraid position, frequently it's because of the price. And so that's where I do the reverse auction. If they're afraid, you could do the other tactic where you do the draft contract. And so what you're doing again is they're afraid, it's complicated, they lack clarity. So chunk it down into some small pieces and just say, let's just pretend for a moment. And would it be helpful to have some specifics to take home with you to think about? Because they're in the think about it mode. And a place where you really have trouble is what we just talked about, where one of them is afraid and the other one's ready to go forward, right? So again, having the specifics can help the D work with the S.
Awesome. And then Kurt is asking, I think this is because I mentioned that there's a process of too many homes, showing them too many at one time. He says, what's the optimal amount of properties to show in one appointment? What do you think, Lee?
Not more than 5.
Yeah, 5 is a good range.
After that, it's like they don't remember which kitchen went to which house, and yeah, you've just got them confused. So that's another reason to have those listing sheets, encourage them to take pictures if it's all right with the seller, give the house a handle, but after 5 houses, things start to run together.
I've got a tip that Chad mentioned as well, which is giving it a name. Like if there was a house with green carpet, it's the green carpet house, or like he talked about the red door house, and the funneling it through the 1, 2, and 3. So you always keep your 1, 2, 3 house, and every time you have them compare. If you're going to be showing even 5 houses, I think they get confused. So you've got to keep that top 3 and always have it churning.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they'll also give you feedback on every house you see, and you won't know what they like or don't like if you don't have them make sure that they're constantly saying, if you had to buy one today, which one it would be. And I'm not going to make you buy. I'm just asking you, this house or this house, which one would you pick and why? And so you're always comparing to the top house.
Yeah.
Well, and to Ted's point, that also helps you to know if it's a couple, if they're on the same page.
Exactly.
One keeps going, I like this one, the others go, no, I don't like this one. Especially in resort areas, maybe one of them just doesn't want to buy.
Yeah,
also
absolutely.
keeping them to that 85% rule. So number 1, it's the funneling. Number 2, it's if they're saying they don't like houses because of things that weren't important to them originally, because in the consultation, we talk about what's important to them, right? And if they're talking or nitpicking things that aren't important to them, bringing them back to what they said was important to them. Ryan said, would saying, Lee, give yourself permission to say yes early on, identify more as language on the S and C side. Give yourself permission to say yes early. So would saying give yourself permission to say yes, is that more of a language for the S and C? An S and a C?
Probably the answer is yes, because C's are going to come in and you ask them, what would you like to see? And they will respond, I want to see everything. Right. So that's why we're telling them 60% of our clients find their house the first time we go out. So that starts to give them permission to say yes. Does that answer the question a little bit?
Question, Ryan. Was there anything else? Was that what you were looking for?
Yeah, that's it. I've just utilized and I've seen this communication used in different formats, and I feel like it's not always the best of communication, much like Lee's story, but I do feel like it would cater to, probably the C communication and maybe bringing their guard down to be more open to saying what they do or don't like also.
Well, it helps them move to what they want. They
Right.
want to buy something. They just don't want to make a mistake.
Awesome. Anything else, you guys? Any other questions?
It's been great. I appreciate it. If there's nothing else, Lee, we thank you so much for taking the time and pouring into all of us, all the techniques that you use to be successful. Next week, we have step 5, offer and negotiate the contract, which I love that portion. That's definitely in my wheelhouse. Lisa, is there anything that you wanted us to say before you close everything out?
No, just thank you. Thank you to Lee. I appreciate it. And thank you to you guys for your involvement and participation and for your takeaways.
Yeah, thanks for all your questions. I really appreciate that.
Thanks, you guys.
Thanks for doing
Thank you, Lee.
Thanks, Lee.
Thanks, guys.
Next one.
Thank you.
Aloha.